welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Claudia. I'm also on Instagram as Knitting with Claudia if you would like to follow me. But in today's video, I would like to talk to you about my knitting journey and how I got to the point where I'm at right now, where I'm starting to design my own garments. So if you're interested, I would love for you to watch. And if you like this type of video and other knitting related content, you can also subscribe if you would like. So yeah, let's get started. So first of all, the person who taught me how to knit was my grandma. And my grandma actually was taught by her mom, my great grandma, who I met when I was little, but she did pass away when I was fairly young, like probably 4 years old or so. But I do have this scarf that she knitted when my grandma was young, and this one she gifted my grandma like a long time ago, and then my grandma actually gifted it to me. So I actually adore this scarf, and I think it's like precious because, you know, my great grandma knit it, and then my grandma gave it to me when I was little. So this is kind of where it all began. And when I was about like 5 years old or so, one day I guess my grandma decided to teach me how to knit. I think I asked her to learn, and so she bought me like the long needles, and she bought herself some needles, and then she bought me some yarn, and we decided to get started. And the only thing that she taught me though was knit stitches, so I never really learned how to purl. I didn't learn how to do any increases, so I would just do like rectangles. So yeah, so that was like when I was little, like when I was 5, and I kind of like would start knitting and then stop and never really finished anything. Sorry, my cat is crying. But yeah, as I was saying, I never really truly finished any scarves or anything when I was little. And then in high school, I was like, oh, like I used to know how to knit, so let me just like try and start again. And so I was actually already in the United States, and so I bought myself new needles and some yarn at Walmart, and decided to make a scarf for my dad, which I don't even know if I finished it or what happened. But something else that I made myself was this, and this is supposed to be a little scarf that I would wear, like, let me show you, like this kind of, which I think it's like super cozy. But it's all knitting stitches, so you can see it's just garter stitch all throughout. But I would wear it like this to high school. I felt so chic. And I kept it ever since, just because it was my first time getting back into knitting, and I just think it's so fun that I decided to do that in high school. I never really like picked it back up. Like I just made a couple scarves, or at least this scarf, and I don't even know if I finished the one for my dad. But yeah, so I wanted to keep it and also just show it to you guys, because I've never actually shown this before. And the yarn was from Walmart, but it actually like has kept, you know, pretty okay with the test of time, I guess. And this was just knitted flat and then really poorly sewn together, as you can see here, in the middle. So yeah, so that was my next attempt at knitting. And while I was doing that, I was like, oh, let me try to learn to crochet. But I would just like watch videos. Like I wouldn't really like, I guess I would just watch like very basic stitches, like videos on stitches. And this is what I came up with, which was a little scarf, actually in the round. I don't even know how I did this. But yeah, and it's really cute. I can try it on for you guys as well. So this is what it looks like, and actually out of these 3, this is the one that I wear the most because I just really like the yarn that I used for it. But yeah, so this was the next thing that I ever, or the first thing actually that I ever crocheted, and like I guess my last attempt at doing any sort of fiber arts when I was in high school. After that, I completely dropped it. And wasn't really interested in it anymore. I kept the needles and stuff in a closet in my house, but other than that, like I didn't really try to do anything with it. And then came 2021. That one day I was just on Instagram, and I was like, do people knit? Like, I don't know. It just kind of came to my mind, like, do people knit? Like, is there more info on Instagram? And so I just like searched for, in like the search bar, I was like knitting, and then Kara's knitting profile showed up, and she only had like 5,000 or 6,000 followers by then. Now she has like 100,000 or something. But yeah, so I started following her, and I really loved what she was doing, and I was like, what the hell, like, I didn't know this was a thing. And so yeah, so I decided to follow her, and finally I was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy my first pattern and try to knit it. And yeah, so I bought the Game Set Match set cardigan. So it's a Game Set Match pattern, which comes which is a set that comes with a cardigan and a top that is kind of like a bulky bralette. So yeah, so I decided to buy that pattern, and I didn't really understand what gauge was at all. I just like couldn't wrap my head around it. And yeah, so I just bought some random like thick yarn from, I think it was Michael's at this point. It wasn't even Walmart, it was Michael's at this point. And he's crying again. And yeah, so I bought some yarn, and I just, instead of doing a gauge swatch, actually I did do a gauge swatch because I needed to practice purling. So I practiced knitting and purling, and then I like did my gauge swatch, and I was like, oh, okay, this is fine. So because for me, like I am a small on that pattern, I was like, if I do a medium, it should be fine with the yarn that I'm using. So I just like did the entire bralette, which I was actually really proud about because I followed the pattern. I needed to look up like some of the techniques online, but other than that, like I did it all by myself. But yeah, I tried it on and it just didn't fit. It was way too small because the yarn wasn't right for it. So then I was like kind of bummed out about that, and I was like, well, let me just buy some thicker yarn. And then I started looking into what gauge was, and finally I understood it. And I bought like thicker yarn, and I did my gauge swatch. It was perfect actually, and so I re-knit it again, and I made this, what I'll pop on the screen, which was, first I made the top, and then I made the cardigan right after. So I'm really proud to say that my second real attempt at knitting was the cardigan from the Game Set Match pattern, or yes, pattern. So yeah, and then in January 2022, after like a few months of knitting, because I picked it up again on August 2021, so January 31st, 2022, I decided to make Knitting with Claudia on Instagram, which is my Instagram page. If you don't follow me there, I guess I'll say it again, you can follow me there. But yeah, so I started knitting, and actually in December, that's I think when Kara came out with the Williamsburg sweater, and like the thick one. And I was like, oh, I need to make this, like I need to. So in December I actually made that, and I finished it like early January. I would say I finished it either January 1st or 2nd, because I was knitting like crazy to finish that thing, because I knew I was gonna come back to California and I wasn't gonna be able to wear it. So I needed to wear it in New Mexico, where it's a little bit colder than here. So yeah, so I made that, and that was my first ever post on Instagram, which I will put here so you can see. And since then I have been knitting like crazy non-stop. Then I think in March of last year, so 2022, I did my first ever test knit for Kara, because I used to be I mean I still am, I think she's great, but I used to be a crazy fan of Kara and her design, so I really wanted my first ever test knit to be for her. And that's when I test knitted the million color cardigan, the bulky one, for her, and I used like yellow yarn and then green mohair. I think that piece is really nice, but I don't wear it as much because the colors that I chose is just like super out there, and people look at me when I wear it, and like I do get some compliments, but still it's like, damn, like people are looking at me, I don't know how I feel. But yeah, so anyway, so I made that, and I kept test knitting like quite a bit, I would say. In August actually, I was doing another test knit for her it was the To the Nines dress from also Kara, and I actually injured myself because I was knitting so much. I was never stretching, and I would say like I would get off work at like 5:30, and I would just knit till like 10 p.m. Like that was my everyday to day. Like, and then in the weekends I would knit. Like I would go to the dog park with my knitting. I would go to the beach with my knitting, all the time knitting. It got to the point where my arms and hands couldn't take it anymore, and I got a repetitive motion injury. It started, I think, on the right, and then it moved over to the left, and then both hands were messed up. And so basically my issue was that it would hurt here, here, and here. And I was like, you know, it'll go away, like it's fine. So I told Kara, and she's like, well, if you can't finish the test knit, it's fine, like I completely understand. And I was like, thank you. Like, yeah, so it took way longer to heal than I thought it ever would. My arms, just because it started only on the wrists and then it spread to my arms, and I just like stopped knitting for like, well, since August to October. And I finally, actually at the end of August or in the beginning of September, I decided to go to the doctor, and they sent me to the occupational therapist, and he told me a few exercises that I could do. And he told me to come back after my trip, because I went to Vietnam in September for a conference with one of the projects I'm doing for my PhD. And he told me to come back after the trip, and I never did, which I feel really bad about because I really should have. But yeah, so I have been doing the stretches that he told me to do, and just resting more, and I will knit for like 30 minutes and like just stop and things like that. Like I've been taking better care of myself now, and I can say I would say like I'm 80% recovered, but I can't say I'm 100% recovered. Like if I do knit on thinner needles, it sometimes hurts, and I do have to make more stops, but I prefer just stopping or resting a little bit and stretching a little more, and that way I'll be able to enjoy this fiber art for longer than if I just ignore it and it starts hurting again, like bad, because it would hurt bad. I was actually sleeping with like arm braces on, like with a piece of metal on my hands, on both arms, for the longest time. That would keep my hands a little bit like this, just slightly, just so I wouldn't like go like this when sleeping. And in fact, I want to start wearing those again because my wrists have been like giving me some issues. Now that I am back to knitting a little bit more, and I want to prevent like any further injury. So yeah, so that was like August to October, and even a little bit of November. And then I don't know if you've seen the first video on my channel, but the vest that I'm wearing in the first one, in the first video, which is the same one as this one but brown, that was the first, well, I guess that was the second finished object that I had ever since August from my injury. And thankfully I have been able to keep knitting and crocheting, and I've been able to finish other things, but just, you know, taking it slow and just taking care of myself. And I think that's one of the big lessons that 2022 taught me, is that yes, you can enjoy your hobby and you can knit all you want, but at least take care of yourself and stretch. So if you don't stretch, you should, just saying. But yeah, and so that's where basically my knitting journey has taken me till now. And I know it was kind of scattered. I didn't really prepare any notes for this video because I wanted to just tell my story like how it is. I didn't want it to be scripted. But yeah, and now I'm just enjoying that, you know, I have gained a lot of skills. In this past year, I learned to do lace, I learned to do cables. So basically I learned to read charts, and I learned to design something for myself, which is this vest that the testing call is probably already out. I don't know when I'm posting this, so yeah. But yeah, I'm just proud of myself that even though I went through like a very bad repetitive motion injury, that I'm just really thankful that of what it has taught me, which it has taught me patience. And I'm also really thankful for just being able to learn so much this past year. So yeah, that's my knitting journey. I wanted to keep this video kind of short. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you hopefully in my next video. And if you did like it, I forgot to say, please subscribe and like the video. So anyway, thank you so much. Bye.